I think it's just been a difficult week for everyone. I think in any of the markets, people want stability and certainty. In the last couple of weeks have not been that. Um, Personally, I think there's some good intentions with some of the things that they're put forward, but just a bit confusing as the general message. And some of the areas, for example, the corporation tax reduction is not really going to drive profits. Okay, it'll help if people do make some profits, but I'd rather see more focused support on actually driving profit in the business rather than reducing tax on the profits. So things like targeted support in the hospitality sector for specific areas like VAT reductions, or more support in a longer term plan around utilities, because I don't see the support that they've given just now as fixing the problem. It's sort of putting a sticky plaster on it. I would rather see investment in a longer term solution. So whether that's giving support for funding for green technologies or things like that, I would rather see that type of investment coming forward. But yeah, I mean, I think cost management is something we've always done, so it's not a new thing for us. But obviously, just now it's everywhere. Cost inflation's personally and professionally a challenge just now. So we're looking at everything we can do. We benchmark ourselves internally and externally on all cost lines. So using things like hot stats for external benchmarking, we're looking at line by line how we're performing, where there's opportunity to improve, and trying to understand if there's an area that we're not doing as well as the competitors in the market. Why is that? What could we do differently? So doing that as we always have done, but with a bit more focus more recently. And then specifically with our procurement department, looking at how can we work differently with suppliers, looking at frequencies of deliveries, around whether or not we need as many deliveries in a week. Could they be at different times? Looking at products on a menu, trying to look at more seasonal products that are maybe a bit more cost effective. And in other areas, we're also targeting the hotels on sort of direct consumption reductions on utilities. That's something we've been focusing on for a while, but obviously with the utility cost increase, that's become a bit more of a obvious area to make some savings in the hotel P&L. So we're trying to get the hotels focus more on that. We've also incorporated ESG targets into the hotel general managers bonus schemes now. So it's not just about financial performance of the hotel, it's about making sure that they're also addressing the areas around energy consumption, around sort of engagement with local communities and charity projects, and then also things in the governance side, so things like health and safety audits and that type of thing is now a core part of what they're targeted and ultimately bonused on. So hopefully that will change the mindset of people in the business. This is a difficult area because there isn't really the sort of guidance or legislation just now to drive ESG, so we're having to do it ourselves and sort of lead our company and hopefully lead the industry in a direction that we think is right. So we've put a lot of work over the last couple of years from an ESG point of view in terms of both assessing where we're at, which I think is an important step to do. So we've had an external company come in and sort of review all of our ways of workings and performance data around all of the full spectrum of ESG, which I think is important. It's not just an environmental focus, and we had a detailed report last year around where we're scoring in certain areas and what we do. So we have a full plan as part of our strategy around how we improve in each of those areas. But it's difficult. It's not an easy area to focus on, but I think we're doing as much as we can and trying to make sure that it becomes part of day-to-day work in the hotels as well. So Susan Bland, who's our managing director,
Yes.
She has been driving that sort of personally with a lot of interest in that, and also chairs IHG's Global Sustainability Committee. So that's been really good to get involvement with a lot of people and dialogue, because I think this issue, particularly around the environmental side, is not one that we should be working on in isolation. It needs to be a collaborative approach and sharing best practice and things. So there's lots of committees. So UFI with the EEA leading that, and again, Gregor McNaughton, who's our Chief Technical Officer, sits on that technical committee looking at sort of legislation and guidance around that. So there's lots of platforms that are working together, and I think that's the right thing for the industry for us to do. Yeah, no, it's a really big part of our strategy moving forward. So the hotels, it's been a year-long process of sort of pitching and getting ready for the takeover. But we were picked for it effectively because we were able to demonstrate over a long period of time track record in the industry, and I think also culturally sort of clicked very well with the investors, which was an important part. And just back to the ESG point, this is the first contract that we've signed with an investor where there's been specific ESG wording incorporated in the contract, which is really good in showing the intentions of both them and us in that space. So there's lots of wording in our contract around how we'll work together and collaborate on driving ESG improvements across the hotel. So that was a big part. But specifically on luxury, there's very few management companies who have experience in the luxury space. And so that's something, I think, as one of the sort of longest established management companies in the UK, we think there's a good opportunity for us to really sort of put our stamp on that space and really sort of grow our share there. And that's not at the detriment of our core business or our history in terms of the full spectrum of hotel operations, but in the luxury space, we think we're there. We've got some really, really good properties in that space. So we think in the coming months and years that we want to grow our share in that space.